All right, everybody. Thank you guys for joining. We got a good one for you today. I am Noah Rosenblatt of UrbanDigs, and today we got Andrew Goodman from Gotham Valuation, founder, owner, CEO, and he's been doing this a long time. It doesn't look like it, Andrew. You look very young indeed, but you got what, 3 decades of experience going on here?
Yeah, managed to survive in this industry since 1996. So that puts me
Wow.
in the 90s, 2000s, 2010s, 2020s. We're now on the fourth decade of appraising Manhattan and Brooklyn. It is insane. It's
Unbelievable.
survivability.
Yes, unbelievable. And we got you. We got you for the next 25, 30 minutes. And I'm just going to say to our audience out here, guys, you're on mute. You're on mute for this. I got a set of questions to ask Andrew. But if you guys have your own questions, please just put them right into the chat and we will circle back with Andrew. We'll try to get to all your questions. But Andrew, I want to start off. Okay, we're going to try to extract some of that expertise. These agents want to get deals done. It's good for them to understand how an appraiser thinks so that they could do their job better. And the first question I got for you, Andrew, is how does the appraiser selection process work for different banks?
Ooh, excellent first question, Noah. It's kind of a very convoluted process. I wish it were more straightforward. There are multiple different channels from which each individual bank can use to select its appraiser. There are some financial institutions that have direct panels where they have an appraisal desk that would contact us directly. There are some financial institutions which use third-party appraisal management companies, which are basically middlemen that broker out the appraisal assignments and collect a portion of the fees for themselves in that process. It's a less than ideal model, but one that sort of became prevalent with Dodd-Frank many years ago in terms of fostering appraisal, what they thought would foster appraisal independence. What's further confusing is that there are some banks, and this is an anecdote that just came across my desk last week, like JPM Chase, which is as big as any bank, actually has both models. I am on their direct engagement panel, and I'm also receiving Chase work from third-party appraisal management companies. And what I heard from one of the parties in charge is that, for example, at Chase, 9% of their appraisal loans that are originated go to their direct panel, which they manage themselves, which leaves 91% of the appraisal orders to get distributed amongst 5 different appraisal management companies in the United States. So it shows you sort of how the word I would use is disorganized and sort of haphazard. No one really, when I give you a ring or send you a text message, say, hey, I'm the bank appraiser. No one really knows how that piece of work came to my desk. And it's sort of,
Yeah.
random in every case, depending upon the bank.
So these appraisal management companies, before we go into the next question, this
Yeah,
largely came from the great financial crisis, right?
this is true. They wanted to put up a boundary between loan officers and the appraisers, and their infinite wisdom, they thought, let's take a third party entity that then has to sort of manage all the information back and forth.
Right. I mean, I remember when I first started in this business, 2005, we used to have the ability to potentially select appraisers and recommend appraisers. I mean, that's completely removed. That's way,
Oh
way
my God,
beyond.
that
Yeah.
that's a thing of yesteryear that, in my wildest dreams that would come back, because then it would just be a popularity contest. People would say, Andrew,
Yeah.
he's such a great appraiser, he knows Manhattan, but that doesn't exist anymore. And the other thing I would add, and I think this is readily understood, is that you cannot order your own, like a buyer cannot necessarily go out and order their own appraisal. Occasionally we get people calling up saying, I'm buying an apartment, I need an appraisal to submit to my bank. And I think most people understand this intrinsically, or their brokers have guided them, but that is not a possibility. I can't do an appraisal for you, John Q. buyer, and then have you submit that to Chase. They need to request their own
Right.
appraisal,
Right. So
and
it's a removal of conflict of interest is really what they're going at. But the unintended consequence of all that is that you're getting these appraisal management companies that are getting pinged, and then now they're coming in to do the job, and they might be from a totally different market
Correct.
totally different sector,
And
and
they're
not
actually
have the expertise. Yeah.
right. And unfortunately, they're profit motivated. So if you are running an appraisal management company, the question is, which appraiser can I find to take this appraisal for the lowest fee, and therefore pocket the difference between what the purchaser is paying for the appraisal and use that as my revenue. So
Right.
there is not an alignment of interest in terms of, let us find the most qualified, fastest appraisal. I actually had not to dwell on this question longer, but I had a case last week where I found out that an appraisal management company from California hired an appraiser for $550 to appraise one of the most complex properties I had ever come across in 30 years. It was a 3,000 square foot penthouse in a neighborhood that had no 3,000 square foot penthouses, and his value was off by about $750,000. And I called up after the fact and I said, this particular assignment is the living demonstration of where the industry is broken. Someone in their infinite wisdom selected someone without geographic competency at an absurdly low fee to appraise something that they couldn't possibly put the time and energy into understanding.
Wow.
And now you're coming back to me to pay me double out of your own pocket to fix it.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a perspective I think a lot of us agents don't really see this side of the sector. So I'm glad you're on here talking about this. Let's go to the next question, because this is definitely something agents will want to know. I got two parts here. How do you select comparables? All right. That's question number one. And how does meeting lender requirements impact the comparable selection process?
Yeah, that's an interrelated question. And we do select comparables with a little bit of a different mindset when we're doing a bank appraisal than when we're doing a private appraisal, with the reason being that banks have fairly standardized requirements that we have to meet. In terms of the number of comparables and where the comparables come from. Sometimes that paints us into a corner. One of the most basic requirements is that if we're talking about what is prevalent in, let's say, Manhattan, which are individual apartments, whether they're co-ops or condominiums, is that we use a certain number of comparables within the same building that we're appraising. So whatever the address is, if I've got a 2-bedroom apartment there and I'm doing this for Chase or Wells Fargo or Bank of America or whomever, my first process is to try to find at least a minimum of 2 comparables from within that same building, because that is what's going to meet the bank's checklist. The problem is sometimes there are not 2 great comparables from within the same building. If it's not a building that has 600 apartments, maybe it's a walk-up building, or maybe it's, a 1-bedroom in a building that has all 4 bedrooms, and there just isn't an ideal match. What that sometimes fosters is us choosing comparables that are less than ideal just to meet the bank's requirement. In the world where someone calls me up and says, I need to really understand what my home is worth, I want to hire you for a private appraisal or some other purpose, a divorce, a litigation, an estate, we don't have those same requirements. If I'm working on something that has an unusual feature, I don't have to limit myself to comparables within the building. I can look at I can look at any comparables that I deem to be appropriate. For just to finish off this question, what the banks also require is that we have all of our comparables within 365 calendar days. So I don't really ever use comparables that are beyond a year old. And of those 3 closed comparables, ideally, I think depending on every bank is a little different. I need to have at least 1 within 6 months as a standard. So it's really problematic. I don't think there's any appraiser submitting any bank appraisal where they have comparables that are older than 6 months.
Yeah. You guys have to operate under a different set of rules than us agents. I mean, we're not appraisers at all, but I mean, we have,
Right.
at least we don't have those rules on us. We can look at something if it's a year and a half old and very relevant. Well, just before we go to the next question, I want to ask a few follow-ups here. Would you agree that in vertical markets like Manhattan, each building tends to operate like their own little marketplace?
I would say so. There are exceptions. I mean, there are some buildings where you could say, okay, this is the vertical for this 1980s condo, and here are 4 or 5 others in its neighborhood that operate on a similar platform. But we find it all the time where two buildings that on the surface look identical, they have the same type of finish, they have the same type of unit mix or whatever the case may be, but they are their own vertical. Like there isn't using a comp from an outside building will steer you in the wrong direction unless you're sort of reconciling that to the building we're in. This obviously in co-ops, that's very common because of the financial structure. You can go up and down Park Avenue and the buildings all look the same, but one might be an all cash building and one might have different architectural merit, different, board requirements, and one's going to trade at a 50% premium to the other.
Yeah. And this is, I always thought that the agent's job is a little harder than appraisers. I gotta be honest, I'm guilty of saying this, Andrew. I don't mean to diminish the role of what you're doing. I'm sure it's extremely difficult. But agents don't have that contract of sale in their hands.
Right.
That actually shows what the market produced. They're tasked with saying, what will this trade at before the market produces that contract and that bid.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up because that actually wasn't a topic I was planning to address, but it's extremely relevant. Whenever we're showing up for a purchase transaction, I have the contract of sale in my hand. So I know what the deal is sort of, I don't want to say contingent upon, but it's not me objectively coming up with a number. If I were to try to appraise properties without knowing what they're selling for in advance, no one would ever get bank financing. It would be like a mathematical impossibility. So yes, it doesn't mean that we're rubber stamping every contract, but it does mean that when your value conclusion can be supported, I'm approaching, every appraiser is different, but I think in order to be successful at doing what I'm doing and getting repeat work and having relationships in the community, you have to approach writing a bank appraisal from, is this conclusion supportable? Rather than what do I objectively think this is worth? Because if I were to say, okay, this deal is at $1,050,000, but I'm certain that it's not worth more than $1,035,000. Who am I to say that within, that am I smarter than the market to interpret it within $15,000? Absolutely not. So to the extent that I need to support this number, I'm going, I would say 9 out of 10 of us in this field are going to hit that number. Now, if your number is 20% over any substantiated data points, it does happen on few, limited occasions where, it's just not supportable.
Excellent.
But that's not the
excellent. Yeah, very, very interesting. Thank you. Guys, put your chats in here. In case you got something for Andrew, I will try to get to it before we're in. I got a couple more questions, but I just wanted to remind you guys to share any questions that you guys may have. Moving on. So we talked about how the appraiser selection process works, right? How that person gets picked. We talked about how to select comparables and what the restrictions are on your part. Let's talk about, once those comparables are selected, making adjustments. Because that's a tricky one. How do you make adjustments? What factors go into it? I mean,
that's the $64,000 question, because anyone can find a comp. I can go on StreetEasy and take a comp, but then what do you do with it? Yes, okay, valid point. What do you do with it? And there are a multitude of factors that you have to look at, and everything gets a mathematical adjustment. When I show up at an appointment for, let's say, a refinance, and someone, a curious owner will say, well, what are you looking at? It's just all based on square footage. That's the common misnomer, that it's all based on square footage, a price per square foot. And I think that couldn't be farther from the truth. Size is a factor, but it's just one factor. If you've seen a standardized sort of what looks like a bank report, like a spreadsheet that goes in at the main, we call it a grid page, it goes through it, all the different factors are. And what I like to say is they're the factors that a buyer would look at when they're out shopping. You wouldn't just look at the size of an apartment. You would look at the location of where the apartment is. Maybe before you looked at anything, the location is your first factor. I would look at, what are the ownership rights of the building? Is it a co-op or is it a condo? I would look at what amenities the building has. Does it have a doorman? Does it have the best amenity package anyone's ever seen? Does it have no amenities whatsoever? I would look at, is it a walk-up or an elevator? If it's on a ground floor of a walk-up, does it even matter? Because maybe there's no walk-up to be had. I would look at the floor level of the apartment, which brings me to an interesting point. Some of the factors that I've talked about, like location, for example, is subjective. What I think is good, what I think is excellent, might be different than what think is good or excellent or poor. But if I tell you that the apartment's on the 12th floor and the comparable is on the 9th floor, we can both agree that's a difference of 3 floor levels. If I tell you that one is 1,200 square feet and one is 1,070 square feet, we can both agree that that's 130 square feet of difference. And those are objective differences that are, one has a terrace, one doesn't. We might have different opinions on what that terrace is worth, but we're not wrestling with, is this good? If the condition of an apartment is excellent, is the comparable excellent too? Is it better than excellent? Is it worse than excellent? We could debate those things at large. So there are a lot of subjective differences or factors and objective differences that we have to adjust for. So going down the list, we have the floor level, we have the view, which is another incredibly valuable, important piece. Does it look at Central Park? Does it look at the Hudson River? Can I see the Statue of Liberty? Is it a ground floor unit that looks at the trash chute, and has pedestrian traffic walking in front of its windows all day long? And what are those, what is the numerical adjustment for that factor? We look at the number of rooms, the number of bedrooms, the number of bathrooms. Those are all important factors. We look at one factor that I think not everyone, understands really well, is a concept that I think is labeled functional utility, which means we look at how well an apartment functions. I can show you 2 different classic 6s, and one might have, a compromised layout where maybe the bathroom, I saw one the other day where the bathroom was actually accessed through the living room. I'm like, why in hell would a second bedroom bathroom be on its own next to the fireplace? There's obviously some sort of atypical layout there, which can be, what I call functional utility. We'll look at what is the heating and cooling? Does it have central air conditioning? Does it have split ducts? Does it have just radiators and someone throwing a window unit in there? Does it have outdoor space? Does it have a terrace, a balcony? Does it have a fireplace? Are there any other quirky features like double height ceilings or storage rooms? Yeah. Now that's the laundry list of amenities or factors that we adjust for. And then what we have to do is, if I've listed, 10 plus factors there, I may take the 5 or 6 most important ones and make plus or minus, positive or negative adjustments for each of those factors. So let's just say the comparable sold at its closing price last month was $1 million. And it might be, let's say that unit was a lot smaller than the one I'm appraising, and it was on a lower floor, and it didn't have a view, and it had a awkward layout. Maybe by the time I'm done adjusting that comparable, I've added 20+% of value to it. So maybe even though it's sold at $1 million, it might tell me that my subject is worth 1.2 or 1.3 or some other mathematical number, either higher or lower, depending upon whether those adjustments are net positive or net negative.
Yeah, I want to stay on this for 1 second. I got a couple of rapid fire questions. I mean, how would you advise us agents trying to put a value on an amazing view? Let's just start with that for a second. Let's say let's just say you're lucky enough to have a building. Like, let's say you have 30A versus 15A. 15A is looking at a building, 30A has a river view, right?
Right.
Or a park view. Let's say river. How would I go about doing that type of adjustment?
Yeah, that's really subjective. There isn't a right or wrong answer, but I for one usually use a percentage factor. The difference that you are describing to me is something that if you cornered me, you found me on the street corner and said, "What do you think?" I would say a minimum of 10%, 10 to as much as 15 to 20%, depending upon how dramatic that was. I think the largest adjustment I've applied for a view difference If we're talking it like I'm over the trees on Central Park, versus no view whatsoever, like take a building like the Essex House, a condominium on Central Park South. You face front, you see the park. You face the back, you see nothing. That could be a third of the value of the entire apartment. That could be 35%.
Wow. Wow. Very interesting. All right, let's keep
You
this
don't,
going.
you don't even want to have to use that comp, but like on some occasions you
Right.
do.
Because if you're making so much of an adjustment, it might degrade the value of the comp itself, and
Correct.
the conclusions get degraded, right? Um, how do you calculate and value outdoor space? And in
Oh,
that calculation, I know. And I
yeah.
had to ask it though. In that
I will.
calculation, is the fact that the outdoor space is behind the building versus in the front of the building, how does that play a role as well?
Yeah, view it. I mean, outdoor space, it's not just square footage of outdoor space. It goes back to the adage, not all square feet are created equal. There's a lot of factors we look at. Certainly, outdoor space has what we call contributory value, and after a certain point, it will contribute marginally until it stops, until it becomes excessive. So if I have a 500 square foot apartment and it's got a 2,000 square foot terrace, after about 500 square feet, it becomes useless. It becomes like no additional value, but it might contribute dramatically up into the first 500 or so square feet. The accessibility is very important. Can I open up my French doors directly from my living room and walk out to it? That would be an example of the most valuable kind of outdoor space, like a wrap terrace, versus do I have to climb up a spiral? I was just in an apartment last week that was 3 levels. The main outdoor space was on the upper level, except first you had to take a spiral staircase up to the bedroom, and that brought you to a large 800 square foot terrace. Then, once you were already outside, you had to take an external staircase up to the second 800 square foot terrace. So what's the value of that second 800 square foot terrace that you can only get to after you've accessed the main terrace? It's probably pretty small.
Yeah.
And that whole, call it 1,600 square feet of out. What's funny in that appraisal, I actually said that the 1,600 square feet of combined outdoor space was less valuable than comparables that might have had 500 square feet of outdoor space, but it was right off of the main living room, and you just open up the door and you walk out with your cup of coffee and your sandwich, and you're staring at the park. So access is a consideration. The level of finish is a consideration. Does it have lighting? Does it have irrigation? Does it have beautiful landscaping and paving?
Yeah.
Or is it simply an unfinished roof?
Yeah.
And the view is important. Again, even a balcony, if you will, which are standardized in size. Does it face the river or the park, or does it face the back of the building? I know what we get into is the issue of double counting, which we try to avoid. Am I adjusting for the view, and then am I also adjusting for the terrace with the view? How do I parse those out so I'm not accounting for the view twice? It's challenging.
Very, very, and guys, I hope when you're listening to this, Andrew can't give you an answer of X amount of money. You guys know that the market doesn't operate in a vacuum like that, and there's all these factors coming in. So, when you ask what is the value of outdoor space, and you're hoping, 100,000, 200,000, there are what Andrew's giving you is what his thinking process is, what his methods are, what are the factors that he's looking at, with the hopes that he could get you to think that way too, and to have those conversations with the client. Like, I would never have thought that double terrace. I know the utility is bad, but I never would have thought the penalty would have been that much to put it on par with a 500 square foot terrace that has an excellent utility. So, like, these are really incredible insights. I want to ask another question that I got here. How does maintenance factor into the value of co-ops?
Yeah, there's a number of different ways of looking at that. One factor we need to consider is what is the reason if maintenance is very high or very low. Does the building have any typical amount of debt? Is it a land lease building? Are they, is it just not mismanaged? Is it inefficient in how it's run? Yeah, or the assessments in place. So getting off of the reason why, but just how does it impact value? There are different ways that I've seen it tackled, and I look at it in terms of my methodology is I will look at maintenance, and if it's a condo, also like common charge, and apply it on a per square foot basis. So it's a unique calculation where we're basically taking a weighted monthly difference, like you're talking like a maintenance per square foot and then I will take whatever whatever number my residual number is, and multiply that times a number of months that represents a fair holding period. So for example, not to say this method is any more correct or valid, but I'll usually use a factor of 5 years, which is 60 months. So if I come to the conclusion that comparable has a maintenance which is $200 higher than mine, after accounting for the square footage difference, I'll take that 200 and multiply it by 60, and that will be the mathematical difference that I will use to account for the difference in maintenance. And sometimes it's a negative adjustment if the comparable has a better lower maintenance. Obviously, lower maintenance is better than higher maintenance. No one wants to pay more than they have to.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Hopefully that answer was received by whoever asked that. Also, floor to floor, is there a general rule for views difference? You got a 5-floor difference. How do you approach that on a floor to floor?
Yeah, so I do separate view, like as I mentioned, I do separate view out as a separate component, different than if you were looking at the Schedule A of a brand new condominium. You might see a jump from all of a sudden 19 to 20, and they're not saying, okay, X number of dollars is for floor and X number of dollars is for view. The developer is just pricing a unit higher or lower based on whatever they are considering. In the world of bank appraising, we're bound by certain requirements, and the truth of the matter is we all strive to have our adjustments be as low as possible, as small as possible, because there's an underwriter on the back end who's looking at it, and if they see, holy crap, the appraiser is taken 60% of the adjustments for view because they've compared floor level 3 to floor level 60, they're going to throw that appraisal back to us as fast as they can and say, sorry, try again. So we do, truth of the matter, it doesn't always result in the most accurate reports, try to minimize adjustments. So again, rule of thumb, I usually start with 0.5% of a unit's relative value. So what does that mean? If we're talking about a $2 million apartment, give or take, 1% would be $20,000. Half of that would be $10,000. So on a property in the $2 million range, I might adjust about $10,000 per floor. But on top of that, I may also have to consider that one of my comps has a view differential. And so on top of that 20, because in a new develop, if you look at what the market is doing, it's probably way more than $10,000 a floor. But there, as a separate component, we're looking at what is the view difference. Sometimes it's more so, like if I'm doing a loft in Soho that's a $5 million property and most buildings are only 5 stories or 6 stories tall, then a number like $5,000 or $10,000 might be inappropriately low or small. I might do $50,000 a floor, the difference between the second floor and the fourth floor, or maybe even more.
Excellent answer. And by the way, guys, this is being recorded. I am going to put this up on UrbanDigs, so you can always catch this again if you missed something. There's a lot of math here, so you might have to just listen again and 1 or 2 times until you understand it. I got more questions. I want to send these questions, and I think they're great questions. Is there a standard procedure for appraisers to measure square footage? I've seen the square footage in appraisers for the same line vary by 20% or more in co-ops.
Oh my God. No, what a question. I mean, this is the bane of my existence.
I love these questions.
Yeah, we can do this. Let's just take the whole afternoon and answer questions. Or someone can piggyback along with me. I wish that there were a standard method of determining square footage. There is actually something that is called ANSI, ANSI, which is a standard that secondary market like Fannie Mae has mandated. I will tell you that I've not paid attention to it once in my life, and I don't know that any appraisers in Manhattan necessarily would. But from the perspective of what we're supposed to be doing with an apartment is measuring what you would call the net livable square footage. I've never done that, and it's also impossible for the reader of the report to tell the difference. But if you look at any new condominium development, they measure the standards to measure to the exterior surface of the exterior walls. So you might get a 1,400 square foot apartment where if you measured the interior, it might be 1,270 square feet or some sort of smaller factor. And honestly, I've studied the difference enough. If you ask me what the difference is, I'd ballpark it mostly around 12% is how much you lose in terms of net livable versus like marketable square footage. But certainly, so here's where that question becomes interesting. There is no such thing as formal training for how to measure an apartment. There are people who have a pulse, who are alive and can show up, drive 30 miles to show up in someone's door. It doesn't mean if you handed them a tape measure and showed them which way was north or south, they could figure out how to calculate the area of a room. Like, say, I was literally last week. I measured a room at 33 square feet. It was a large ballroom that was 33 feet one way, 33 feet the other way. They handed me a copy of, this was that appraisal that was off by $750,000 that I was lamenting about. They showed me a copy of that appraisal, and the appraiser said the room was 28 by 28 after I measured it by 33 by 33. How in the, how does that happen? So there's no rhyme or reason. Good news is that most of the time, like, I've actually stopped measuring. Like, anyone who's met me, I usually do not measure anything anymore, unless it's a bizarre building that has no floor plan available online. But like 99 times out of 100, the apartment floor plan is available, or a line is available on StreetEasy before I even get there. And it's either been measured by an architect, or someone has the floor plan guy who shows up, or you can tell that it's 11 by 18. And I do work off of those measurements. And, if I'm off by 6 inches, by a foot, it's not moving the needle. If I'm off by 5 feet, if I'm saying a 33-foot room is 28 feet, we have a problem. But unfortunately, there's no rhyme or reason. What we try to do when we're evaluating, especially with co-ops, there's no standards whatsoever. With condominiums, there's a public record. I will go through and back into, I just find it's an easier process. So I see what Property Shark or StreetEasy says the square footage is before I even get there, and I will make the measurements fit that square footage as long as it's reasonably accurate. So if StreetEasy says the unit's 1071 square feet, I'll show up and take the measurements and make it fit 1071 square feet, unless it isn't.
Excellent. All right. I got a few more questions and then we're going to stop, guys. You mentioned that there is a devaluation for buildings that require all cash or 50% down. Could you just answer briefly what that devaluation or how would you evaluate that type of building versus others?
I honestly, I don't know if I mentioned that, but I'm not sure that there is a devaluation for all. I mean, first of all,
I'm sorry, differentiation, not devaluation, differentiation. I apologize.
Well, so the tricky part of that equation is understanding which buildings are which in the first place. Like, there are occasions where someone is doing a financing transaction in an all cash building. Most of those are uptown, like on the east side, for example. I don't know that I've even found any in other neighborhoods. It's not clear unless you really dig in to know which buildings are also all cash buildings, or which buildings have the same level of financing. My process in that case, again, this is where we go back to each building having its own vertical in terms of what it's worth, is to try to match up data points. Even if I have to go back, let's just say these exclusive buildings don't have a lot of transactions. Let's say nothing sold in 3 years. I might try to, and I have a comparable that sold in a completely different building 2 blocks away. I might try to go back to a point in time where both buildings had a sale, and try to equate, okay, what was the differential? I've accounted for a bunch of other factors. What is the difference remaining for one being an all cash building versus, a non all cash building, or 50% financing versus standard financing?
Interesting.
But it's, and honestly, I may just fudge it. Like, I may not even be able to understand that difference and try to make up for the difference in some other cockamamie way. I know that's not the answer that everyone wants to hear, but that's how this process works.
That is exactly what we want to hear, because we're sitting here doing it all the time. We're cockamaming with this, and views and renovations and size and balconies and terraces, and we're trying to. I mean, we're fudging. We're fudging it. Is what we're really doing.
That's what we do so much of the times. How did the appraiser come up with 5% for the location? He pulled it out of the air. He pulled it out of some body part that I don't want to mention. Like, that's how a lot of these things, it's 10% today, but 5% tomorrow. Why? Because I woke up on the left-hand side of the bed. That's how this happens.
That's how these things roll. All right. I got 2 questions and we're going to have to wrap it up here. I think this is an excellent question. What would be the best way to challenge an appraisal?
Oh, there is no good way to challenge an appraisal. Once a bad appraisal is written, I don't want to say game over, but I haven't had a challenge come across my desk in as long as I can remember. Like, I don't even know that this is still going on. But it certainly, you need to, the process is called, what's it called? Value dispute, or like, I don't even know what the form, like, you have to initiate something with the loan officer it's like a value resolution or value dispute. There's typically a form involved where different banks will give the broker, answer these questions and provide three comparables that you think are better. It's usually incredibly ineffective because there are so many. The last thing that an appraiser wants to ever do is reopen a file and admit that they were wrong. And again, unless
They
there's
bring in a secondary appraiser in that situation, or
so
no?
some banks will, if you're lucky, and I can't even tell you which will and which won't. But in an ideal world, you can get them to order a new appraisal. I don't think that happens a lot. I would, if someone were asking me for my advice, I would say go pick a different bank and start over again.
Okay.
I think that's honestly easier.
Once it's written, that's it.
It's like squeezing water from a rock, because the appraiser can come up with more tricks than I can. I can even come up out of my sleeve to substantiate why his or her appraisal is correct. I've even received those, and I've received those requests before, and honestly, many times have come up with reasons why, I stand by the report and I'm not gonna change it.
Different lender. Different lender. That's the answer.
Different lender.
All right. This is the last question, and then we're gonna let you go, Andrew. I know you have a busy day here, and I really appreciate your time. This has been awesome. What should brokers prepare or emphasize when they're meeting with appraisers?
Great question. And Noah, I also want to thank you for having me. It's been great on my end too, and I'm happy to meet all these lovely people on the chat. A lot of times when I show up in an apartment, I get handed a list of printout from Street Easy of all the sales in the building. Like, I could do, and which is not to discredit that, but if you're giving me something that has no value add that I can do myself, the first place it's going is the circular file. Like, I don't need you to print out, like, this is what Street Easy says sold in the building. And I don't mean that to be crass or rude. What would be a value add is specific information about specific comparables that may be problematic or advantageous. So given circling back to the fact that I need to use two comparables in the building, if you're going through, you sold an apartment and you see that within the last 365 days, there's one or two sales that are not, that look way too low or way too high or way out of whack, or that you think might be trouble. If anything you can find out to provide to the appraiser, and I hate to say it, even if you have to fabricate it like that, which I'm not, I guess I am, and I am not advocating, but if I was in your shoes, I might. Like, if you know that something was a divorce sale or a fire sale or some sort of, that you can substantiate, give that information to the appraiser. Oh, you'll see 38.8 here. It sold for way less than my unit, which is 35A. The reason this was because it hadn't been renovated in 35 years, or someone was murdered in the apartment. I've seen that happen before. Not the actual murder, but the aftermath. And
it's not reception.
No, I agreed. These are, or something, all of a sudden there's a view differential or whatever that case may be, provide us with the specifics. Or if it's a unique apartment, if it's a 5th floor walk up that has 3 terraces, and that there was something that you compared it to, not in the building, but 10 blocks away, give me that comp so I don't have to spend an hour looking for something that's highly similar, but make it, like, ideally a value add, like some sort of information. The other thing that's really relevant, like I had this the other day where a broker sold a deal but was also competing on a bidding situation in the same building of another unit that was in contract. So was able to tell me, like, if you look at this unit in Street Easy, it sold at I know that it sold at its full ask because I was involved in the bidding of it, even though we didn't win that deal. So if you know the contract price of anything else that hasn't been recorded yet in the building, that would be an amazing piece of information that would be really helpful for us.
Okay, very good. And let me quickly squeeze in this. I got one question here. Juliet balcony, is that considered an outdoor space?
It's considered an outdoor space depending upon, like, if it's just French doors that open up to something that you really can't stand on, there's probably not a ton of value to it, but it is a sort of a desirable design element. Like, that's funny, I've thought about them in different ways. Sometimes having a Juliet balcony allows for a larger window, which provides for greater level of natural light. So sometimes I've thought about that, and this apartment has a greater view, if you will, and view may not just be what you're looking at, but the amount of light that comes into your residence. Two units that have on the third floor and have the same, neither one is looking at something fantastic, but one has windows that are twice as large or has many more of them, would have a better view, even though neither faces the park or the river or anything. And sometimes a Juliet balcony could be a factor that relates to the view, or again, maybe it's just an aesthetic feature, but not a tremendous amount of value, but it is considered an outdoor space.
I would just use caution, because you don't want to give a false impression to the buyer thinking that there's outdoor space, and now the buyer goes in there and upset. And then once the buyer gets upset and whatever, they were expecting something else, that chances go down. I promise this is the last question. I keep getting more questions. If the seller had a pre-listing appraisal done, would you consider that document from a different appraiser?
So I want to just add, I don't know where the window is, but I see that there's a ton of questions in the chat, and I am more than happy for anyone to bombard my inbox with private questions if my contact information
What is your email, Andrew?
So it's on my website, my website is gothamvaluation.com. For anyone who, I'm sure I've met a lot of you on appraisal inspections. I'm A Goodman, AGOODMAN, at gothamvaluation.com.
Okay.
Don't hesitate.
I'm putting it in the chat right now, just so people can know.
I see so many questions that we haven't gotten to answer, and I would like to be able to address them all with the attention they deserve.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. That is awesome. Andrew, you have been great today. This has been a wealth of information, and that is awesome. If you guys have more questions, you know what? If you don't have any questions and you just want to thank Andrew, reach out and say thank you. He didn't have to do this. And he did, and he reached out to me. He wanted to share these insights so that you guys have a nice perspective that you may not have had before. Right. Awesome stuff. This is great. Thank the guy, Andrew Goodman, Gotham Valuation. This has been incredibly insightful. I am Noah Rosenblatt from UrbanDigs. This has been UrbanDigs Workshops, and we will catch you guys next time. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Noah.
Cheers, everybody.